Hello all, welcome once again to my engineering physics channel. This is Sanjeev Bade from KJ Somaiya Institute of Engineering and Information Technology. This is session 2 on nanotechnology, and in this session we will be covering some of the microscopes like scanning electron microscope, transmission electron microscope, atomic force microscope, and at the end we will be discussing some applications of nanotechnology. As we have seen in session 1, nanoparticles are extremely small in size and optical microscopes are not useful to view them. We will have to go for very high resolving power microscopes such as scanning electron microscope, transmission electron microscope, atomic force microscope. So, we will be discussing in this session construction and working of these three microscopes. First, let us discuss some of the prerequisites required to understand electron microscopes. We will be discussing phenomena like electron scattering, tunneling effect, electrostatic focusing and magnetostatic focusing. This phenomena will be used in different types of electron microscopes. Electron scattering. Electron scattering usually implies that the electron changing the path after hitting some other small particle like nucleus of an atom or another electron. As electrons come very close to the particles, their masses and all their related fields interact on a quantum level, and due to this, deviation occurs in the path of the electron. This deviation is called as electron scattering. For example, let us consider high-speed electrons penetrating into the atom. These high-speed electrons are attracted by the positively charged nucleus, and due to this, they deviate from their original path. This is equivalent to collision with the nucleus, and in this process electrons slow down and lose their energy. So in short, scattering means change in path of the electrons after colliding with some other small particles like nucleus of an atom or another electron. Now to understand tunneling effect, let us consider an insulating layer sandwiched between the two metal layers. Now because there is an insulating layer in between, electrons cannot pass from one metal layer to the other metal layer. But interesting thing is observed when we reduce the width of this insulating layer to 10 to 20 angstroms. So when the width of the insulating layer is very small, of the order of 10 angstroms to 20 angstroms, electrons can pass through this barrier and can come from one metal side to the other metal side. This happens due to a quantum effect, and this effect is called as the tunneling effect. So whenever the width of insulating layer between the two metal layers becomes very small, of the order of 10 to 20 angstroms, electrons can cross that barrier and come on the other side. Electrostatic lenses use the principle of electrostatic focusing for their working. According to this electrostatic focusing principle, a beam of electrons experience a change in direction of a motion when travel through a non-uniform electric field. This non-uniform electric field can be obtained with the help of two coaxial tubes, metal tubes T1 and T2. So these two tubes T1 and T2 are kept in front of each other with a small gap between them. These are hollow tubes. Potential V1 is maintained on one tube, potential V2 is maintained on the other tube. So due to this, a non-uniform electric field is produced in the gap between the two tubes as a result of different potential applied to the tubes. These are the equipotential surfaces which are perpendicular to electric field lines everywhere. So these equipotential surfaces will separate the two potential regions. For example, if you consider this equipotential surface, on this side of the surface the potential will be smaller than the potential on the other side of this surface, because as we go in the forward direction, potential is increasing. On the metal tube T2 we are having potential V2 which is greater than V1. Now we know when the light ray enters from one medium to the other medium having different density, it changes the direction. Similarly here, electron beam will change the direction when it enters from one potential region to the other potential region. And as Snell's law in optics, sin I upon sin r equal to mu 2 upon mu 1, this Bethes law in electron optics, that is states sin I upon sin r equal to square root of V2 upon V1 will be followed. So now when electron beams enter in this region of non-uniform electric field, these electron beams are focused, are brought to a point which is called as the focal point. This happens due to the change in direction of electron beam continuously due to the electric force acting on them as they travel through this non-uniform electric field. And ultimately, this, after changing the path continuously, the electron beams will arrive at a single point which is called as the focal point. So this is called as electrostatic focusing, which is used in electrostatic lenses. So we can use this type of electrostatic lenses in the electron microscopes. Another type of lenses used in electron microscopes are magnetic lenses. These magnetic lenses use the principle of magnetostatic focusing. In magnetostatic focusing, we use magnetic field to focus the electrons into a small region. When the electrons enter into a magnetic field, then they travel a helical path. Helical path is a combination of circular motion and linear motion. Radius of this helical path is given by mv sin theta upon Eb, where m is mass of the electron, v is velocity with which the electron is traveling, theta is the angle at which the electron is entering into the magnetic field, E is charge on the electron, and B is magnetic induction. In magnetostatic focusing, in order to focus the electrons into a small region, what is done is strength of this magnetic field is increased as we go in the forward direction. So as the strength of the magnetic field is increased as we go in the forward direction, as B increases, R will reduce, and as R reduces, the electrons are brought to smaller and smaller region, and ultimately they will be confined to a very small region. So this is how focusing of electrons is achieved with the help of magnetic field. It is called as magnetostatic focusing, and it is used in magnetic lenses. So we can use either electrostatic lenses or magnetostatic lenses in the electron microscopes. Let us discuss scanning electron microscope now. It is also called as SEM. SEM. To understand working of this scanning electron microscopes, let us look at this figure first. This is a sample surface which is to be viewed, which is to be magnified. Electron beam is allowed to strike this sample surface, and when the electron beam strikes this sample surface, backscattered electrons are obtained, secondary electrons are ejected, and X-rays are produced. The electrons which are scattered due to elastic scattering are called as these backscattered electrons. Some electrons are knocked off from the atoms on the surface of this sample. They are called as secondary electrons, and some electrons penetrate deep into the inner shell of the sample atoms and knock off the inner shell electrons. And to fill this vacancy created at the inner shell, the outer shell electrons can jump to the inner shell, and this will result in X-rays. So X-rays are produced. So in scanning electron microscopes, we will simply make the electron beam incident on the sample surface. Whatever the backscattered electrons obtained, secondary electrons obtained, and X-rays that are produced are analyzed, and analysis of all these three things will give us the image of the sample surface, magnified view of the sample surface. This is a diagram showing construction of scanning electron microscope. In scanning electron microscope, electrons are made to strike the sample surface. When the electrons strike the sample surface, we have seen we get backscattered electrons, secondary electrons, and X-rays are produced. And by analyzing these backscattered electrons, secondary electrons, and X-rays, we can get the magnified view of the sample surface. So here In this construction you can see electron gun here. This electron gun produces the beam of electrons. This beam of electron is accelerated towards the sample in the downward direction in this case with the help of this anode. This anode is kept at positive potential, so it will attract the electrons towards it, and this anode is provided with one hole, so the electrons can pass through this hole. Then we use a magnetic lens, which is also called as a condenser lens. This condenser lens will focus the electron beam into a small region of size 40 to 50 angstroms. Then we use a scanning coil here. This scanning coil will deflect this electron beam in a particular direction. So by using suitable signal, the electron beam is deflected in a particular direction so that it can strike at different point on the sample surface. So whichever region on the sample surface is to be analyzed, accordingly this deflection is obtained. And once the electron beam is deflected, another lens, a magnetic lens which is called as objective lens, is used to focus this electron beam on a desired spot on the sample. When the electrons in this beam strike the sample, they produce backscattered electrons. These backscattered electrons are the electrons scattered due to elastic scattering. Then they knock off some of the electrons from the atoms on the surface. They are called as secondary electrons. Some electrons are knocked off from the inner shells. Those vacancies in the inner shells are filled by the outer shell electrons, and X-rays are produced. The intensities of backscattered electrons, secondary electrons and X-rays are recorded, and using the analyzer they are analyzed and sent to the monitor, and on monitor we can view the magnified image of the sample surface. So this is how scanning electron microscope works. This is a schematic diagram of scanning electron microscope. So you can see electron gun which emits the electrons. Then we have anode which is used to accelerate the electrons. So this anode is kept at positive potential. Then we have condenser magnets which will focus the electron beams into a small region of size 40 to 50 angstroms. Then we have a scanning coils. These scanning coils are used to deflect the electron beams in a particular direction to scan a desired spot on the sample. Then objective lens is used to focus this electron beam into a small region on the sample surface. Once this electron beam strike the sample surface, backscattered electrons, secondary electrons and X-rays are produced. These things are given to the analyzer, and analyzer will analyze this what is the intensity of scattered electrons, what is the intensity of secondary electrons, what is the intensity of X-rays. So all these things are analyzed and the information is presented to the monitor, and on the monitor we can see the magnified view of the surface of the sample. So this is a simplified diagram of construction of scanning electron microscope. These are some of the images obtained with scanning electron microscope. This is how human hair looks like when seen under the scanning electron microscope. This is an image of bird flu virus, and this is how zinc oxide looks when seen under scanning electron microscope. Advantages of scanning electron microscope are resolution of the order of a few nanometers can be obtained. Information about the elements and compounds in the sample and their relative abundance can be found out. With a scanning electron microscope we can view the biological specimens like pollen grains also. Corroded layers on metal surface can also be studied. Disadvantage is scanning electron microscope can produce the image of surface only up to a few nanometer deep. So the inner picture is not clear with scanning electron microscopes. We can get the image of surface only. Transmission electron microscope, also called as TEM. This is a diagram showing construction of transmission electron microscope. The main parts of transmission electron microscope are an electron gun, the condenser system, the image producing system, the image recording system. Electron gun produces an electron beam. It is a cathode in the form of heated tungsten filament. So electrons are emitted. These electrons are accelerated towards the sample with the help of this anode, which is kept at positive potential. This anode is provided with an aperture in it, so the electrons can pass through this aperture. Then we have a condenser system which contains a condenser lens. A magnetic lens is used for condensing the electron beam, means focusing the electron beam onto the sample. So condenser system, condenser lens focuses the electron beam onto the specimen, the object which is to be viewed. The intensity and angular aperture of the beam is controlled by condenser lens system, which is kept between the anode and the specimen. Then we have image producing system. This image producing system consists of objective lens and intermediate lens. These lenses focus the electrons passing through the specimen to form real and highly magnified image. The objective lens is usually of a short focal length 1 to 5 millimeters, and it produces a real intermediate image, and this real intermediate image is further amplified or magnified with the help of a projector lens. If we need more magnification, then it may be obtained by photographic or digital enlargement. So the image is obtained here on the fluorescent screen. The final part is image recording system. It converts the electron image into the format that can be seen by the human eye. It consists of this fluorescent screen for viewing and focusing the image, and a digital camera for recording the image. Computerized images are stored in a format such as TIFF or JPEG and can be analyzed and processed to get the final image. This is a schematic diagram showing construction of transmission electron microscope. So here also we can see electron gun which produces the beam of electrons. Anode is used to accelerate these electrons towards the sample. We have a condenser lenses which focus the electrons onto the specimen at the specified point. Then we have objective lenses, intermediate lenses which are part of the image producing system, and at the end projector lenses to provide further magnification. Then we have image recording system where the electron image is converted in the format that can be seen by the human eye. This image recording system usually consists of a fluorescent screen for viewing the image and focusing the image. Digital camera further can be used to record the image. Advantage of transmission electron microscope is a three-dimensional image can be obtained. Because the electron beam is passing from one end to the other end, it doesn't just gives the image of surface, but the inner picture is also clear now. So three-dimensional image can be obtained which gives more information about the specimen, and a very small amount of specimen is required for the analysis. Actually, only two-dimensional images can be directly obtained with transmission electron microscope. So this is a limitation, but we can overcome this and we can obtain three-dimensional representation of the specimen by acquiring consecutive images while rotating the specimen through tilt arc. Of course, it requires very high precision and hundreds of images need to be taken. After that only, with the help of computer, three-dimensional image can be constructed. There is a risk here that transmitting electron beam multiple times may affect the specimen structure also. So we can get three-dimensional image with transmission electron microscope, but that will require large efforts. Disadvantage, we cannot say actually disadvantage, but high vacuum is required to be maintained, which adds to the cost. Next is atomic force microscope, called as AFM. This atomic force microscope is a high resolution scanning probe type microscope. So there is a probe here. It is a tool for imaging, measuring and manipulating matter at the nanoscale. It can image all type of surfaces including polymers, ceramics, composite, glass, biological samples, etc. Atomic force microscope works on the idea of producing image by physically pushing a cantilever tip against the sample. The tip movement of this cantilever is analyzed and converted into a three-dimensional image of the sample surface. Atomic force microscope consists of a microscale cantilever of length of around 100 angstroms with a sharp tip, which is called as a probe, having radius of around 10 angstroms. So radius of this tip of the probe is only 10 angstroms. A laser beam is made incident on the cantilever. Here we have got a mirror arrangement. The laser beam is reflected from this mirror, and the reflected laser beam can be collected by array of photodetectors. The light collected by these photodetectors is analyzed with the help of computer devices, and a 3D image of sample surface can be constructed. When this cantilever tip is brought into the proximity of sample surface, the forces such as van der Waals forces, electrostatic forces, magnetic forces and the other forces which arise due to physical interaction between the surface atoms cause the cantilever tip to deflect. So this is how the cantilever tip will be deflected, and as the cantilever tip is deflected, the angle of the mirror will change, and depending on the change in angle, the reflected light ray will change the direction, and accordingly the reflected light rays will be collected by different photodetectors in this array of photodetectors. We can find the amount of deflection produced in this reflected laser beam by analyzing which photodetector is collecting that particular laser beam. So this analysis can be done with the help of computer controlled devices, and analysis of this deflection will help us in producing a 3D image of the sample surface. So this animation will give an idea about how this atomic force microscope will work. So here we have some advantages and disadvantages of atomic force microscopes. The advantages include resolution of better than 1 angstroms under ultra high vacuum conditions can be achieved. 3-dimensional image of sample surface can be constructed. It can be used on non-conductive surfaces also. So whether the surface is conducting or non-conducting doesn't matter. Atomic force microscope can be used for conductive as well as non-conductive surface. It can be used to DAC atoms one by one and deposit them at a particular point on the sample. So manipulating the position of atoms is possible with the help of atomic force microscope. The disadvantages include scanning speed is very low because that tip will move very slowly on the sample surface. If the tip comes in contact with the sample surface, it can distort the surface. So this is one major disadvantage of this atomic force microscope. And now let us discuss some of the applications of nanotechnology. So there are many applications of nanotechnology in different fields. We will try to discuss some of them. Important application of nanotechnology is in medicine field. In medicine, we can achieve targeted drug delivery with the help of nanotechnology. Nanorobots can go at a particular place and directly deliver the drugs at that particular point. Reduces the side effect because the drug delivery is done at a particular location. The other body parts may not experience the side effects. Early diagnosis of the disease can be achieved with the help of nanotechnology, imaging techniques. In electronics, Because of the reduced size and weight of the components, the power consumption is reduced significantly, and it is possible to fabricate smaller and faster processors. So in electronics, nanotechnology finds an application. Nanotechnology finds applications in energy sector as well. Nanotechnology can be used to reduce the cost of catalysts used in the fuel cells to produce hydrogen ions from fuel such as methanol. Nanotechnology can also be used to increase the efficiency of membranes used in fuel cells, which are used to separate hydrogen ions from the other gases such as oxygen. Research is going on the idea of trapping and storing hydrogen using carbon nanotubes. Attempts are being made to develop nanotech solar cells that can be manufactured at lower costs. Nanomaterials are also used to increase energy density of rechargeable batteries, which are used in mobile phones and laptops. With the advancement in nanomaterials, it is possible to develop lightweight spacecraft and cable for the space elevator. It reduces the amount of rocket fuel required significantly, and this advances lower the cost of reaching the orbit and traveling in the space. With larger material strength of the nanomaterials, the spacecrafts made with such materials can withstand high temperature and conditions during launching and re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. Increase in efficiency of solar cell used in nanotechnology. We already discussed in energy sector the nanotechnology has an application, and this solar cell application can also be used in the spacecrafts and satellites. In automobile industry, there are a number of applications of nanotechnology. Nanotube composites have better mechanical strength compared to steel. So efforts are being made to develop cheaper nanotube composites that can replace steel, which is used to construct the body structure of automobiles. Use of nanoparticles in paint provides thin and smooth coating. Nanomaterials used in the fuel increase fuel efficiency. The nanotechnology has number of applications in environmental studies as well. Nanoparticle based sensors are capable of detecting water and air pollution due to toxic ions and pesticides with very high sensitivity. Nanomaterial catalysts can be used to convert the harmful emissions from industries and automobiles to less harmful gases. So harmful emissions can be controlled with the help of nanotechnology. The use of nanotechnology in textile industry made it possible to fabricate water repellent clothes and wrinkle-free clothes. So these are some of the applications of nanotechnology in different fields. There are many other applications also which you can search, and research is going on in different fields. In addition to the applications that I have mentioned, there are many more applications nanotechnology has, and nanotechnology is literally entering in each and every field nowadays. So with this we will stop this session, and I hope that you have enjoyed these sessions. If you like this session, then please subscribe to my channel. If you have any doubts, if you have any queries, you can contact me on my WhatsApp number, or you can communicate with me through Google Classroom. So thank you once again for watching.